Crying and scared to death, the princess of the empire, Visio Ludus Amaryllis, begs for mercy from the emperor. The emperor believes that if his daughter sacrifices herself, there will be peace in the empire. He urges Ludus not to ignore the voices of millions of people by asking for her mercy. Shocked by her father's words, she doesn't know how to react to his decision to kill his own daughter. A sacrifice is required, an empire desperate for the power of the ancient gods. Because of the demons wreaking havoc at every opportunity, killing countless people. In addition, half the land was infested with these creatures. There was a food shortage while it was difficult to maintain production. The only safe place today was the capital and a few major cities near it. Princess Ludus doesn't understand why she has to give her life, and turns to her father for an explanation. She is puzzled as to why exactly she needs to undergo an offering ritual that will tear a girl to shreds. Her father explains that a member of the imperial family must be sacrificed to summon an ancient deity with great power. After all, Ludus knows about it. Ludus objects to her father, for if this is really for humans, then her sister Selene should be the sacrifice instead. But Ludus has always sacrificed everything for her sister, and this time, nothing will change. The high priest explains to the emperor that Princess Selene is more suitable than Princess Ludus, as the latter has only half of the royal blood, to which the emperor objects and says that the decision has already been made. The father says that his daughter has always been useless all her life, now can help the empire for once. He wants his daughter to be honest at least with herself. Even if she survives, she won't be able to enjoy life, for she will remain a cripple with foul blood. The emperor only needs to snap his fingers for the guards to grab his daughter. No matter how much she begs her father or sister, she is still thrown into the sacrificial pit. The high priest began to recite incantations, summoning a great deity, one that all who have gathered here need, in their infinite power, to bind the distant antiquity and our time. They are willing to give noble blood, their progeny. The high priest called upon the deity to respond to the earnest pleas. Ludus endured maddening pain. In the same instant, the ritual ceased. The stone gate and the magic circle disappeared. Immediately, the princess faced the fear of death. Gathering her will in her fist, she struck the unknown creature that appeared before her. It was the eyes of horror, examining all her depths of soul. The darkness practically consumed her. But then she lost consciousness. The man who had saved the princess appeared, wanting to continue living, even if life was meaningless. He picked her up and hugged her tightly. The girl is safe now. She's in no danger. She just fell asleep. Memories came flooding back to Ludus. She remembers how miserable her life was, how she didn't want to die, how her father betrayed her. And now she can't enjoy life as a cripple with dirty blood. Her entire 20 years of life had been a living hell. She recalled how she limped on one leg, which was unacceptable for the emperor's daughter. It made her shorter in stature. Living poor and humble, begging for love from her father and sister. Eventually, a horrible death would overtake her. One thought crossed her mind more and more often. What if it was her father's fault and not hers? Ludus remembered the first time she had escaped from the castle. She couldn't believe it. It was the last thing she would remember when she died, remembering how much she missed that place. If she'd gotten out of there alive, she'd never do anything stupid again. Wouldn't sacrifice herself for others, wouldn't care about anyone else. She could just live her life freely. Waking up perplexed, she couldn't understand what was going on. Where were those feelings, that pain that spread throughout her body, the hot air that made it impossible to breathe? It was all gone. It was just a nightmare. It was just a dream. Servants came into her room and offered her a glass of water. The confused and frightened servants did not know what was happening and what awaited them and Princess Selena. They were doing the emperor's will. Ludus lay bewildered as to how she ended up in Selena's room. And even Selena's ladies were here. And after all, they were daughters from high nobles who had always treated her with contempt. Selene's maids bowed to Ludus. They treated her with respect. But Ludus couldn't understand why her attitude had changed. Especially Princess Ivana, who had never treated her with respect, had become so polite. After all, she was usually treated worse than a commoner, and all because of her impure blood. One day, the princess locked her up in the attic of the palace and saluted the maids to make me eat spoiled bread. The young lady of Count Claudin and the young lady of Viscount Vale offered to call the high priest if Ludus was still unwell. But the princess still doesn't understand what they are up to. Puzzled and in tears, she began to chase away all of Celine's maids and the first ladies of the empire. Absolutely everyone who entered this room. In fear of someone hitting her, she asked to leave her room nonetheless. Trying to smile, Princess Ivana still turned to Ludus once more, but she didn't understand why the princess wasn't angry. Ivana asked Princess Ludus to apologize. This really struck Ludus, as she had never seen Princess Ivana regret anything. The princess wondered why Ludus would do such a thing. After all, she had always envied Lady Celine, whom they served. Even if only for a day or a minute, she had always wanted to receive as much love and attention as her sister. But now she realized she had never been truly loved. If that day came, she wouldn't want to see anyone. Her father, Selena, and all those who were in league with them, she didn't want to see them. After all, the princess constantly felt self-hatred from them. And even considering her father's victory in the battle for the throne, even though she had inherited her father's blood, she had no right to be among the elite, much less near the emperor. The princess had always been on Celine's side, who was recognized as the rightful heir to the throne. She had no problem if she taught Ludus a lesson. Things had changed, but the princess still chased them from the room. One of the maids grabbed Ludus by the arm, for which she received a slap on the cheek. The maid begged her not to leave the room, because if Ludus left, they would all be punished by the emperor himself. A furious Celine burst into the room. With shouts and accusations, she rushed to find out what was going on here and why it was Ludus who was in her room. She grabbed her sister by her dress and started pulling her away from the room, screaming for her to get away as soon as possible. At Selena's words about this being her room, Ludus reacted that it wasn't. She no longer felt afraid of her sister, even though she was yelling at her. Ludus couldn't believe that she wasn't afraid of her sister. Puzzled, and Selena wondered why the one didn't react in any way. No sooner had Selena swung at her sister than Princess Ivana stopped her hand. Fear of the emperor prevented Princess Ivana from watching Celine beat Ludus. This is all so strange. It's already been 3 days since the sacrifice ceremony, and father doesn't seem happy. The high priest looks worried as well. Selena suggested having a tea party so Dad could unwind a bit. The whole time he was in the clouds and not listening to her at all. The frustrated princess wanted to talk to the prince about the case, but he refused to meet her. One of the maids informed her that Ludus would return to the palace after the treatment was over, to which Celine became very angry. She continued to be hysterical. The insolent princess thought it was some kind of mistake. Princess Ivana believes that the emperor's will is above everything, at which Celine took offense. She burst into tears, felt the betrayal of her subordinates and rage in her soul. It was usual for Ludus to be treated this way by Selena's subordinates. Crying, Selena threatened that she would complain to her father. The doors to the room opened. The emperor entered. He looked at his daughters. Selena immediately began to complain about the princess. The princess demanded that Ludus be banished from her room. The father didn't want to listen to his insolent daughter's tantrums. He had no time to entertain and calm Selena. The emperor ordered silence to everyone in the room. The servants bowed before him. Selena simply ran out of the room. Seeing Princess Ludus awake, the emperor demanded her to follow him, but there was hatred in his eyes. He ordered her to follow him immediately. Her father still saw her as well, and in her nothing but a mudblood and a pathetic cripple. He shouted once more for the one to get up. The frightened girl wondered why she wanted to go with her father, only that she refused to follow her father's orders. The father took a swing at his daughter, but didn't hit her. Ludus knew he wouldn't raise his hand. Her father ordered her to follow him again in silence. It took Ludus 20 years to realize how rotten his father was. The princess, although she didn't want to follow her father's order, she still agreed to walk with him. That way, she could understand what was going on. Why on earth had everyone changed their attitude towards her? As soon as Ludus stood up, her leg was very sore. One of the maids offered to help her, but she refused. They entered the room with the high priest. He seemed to be the only one happy to see Ludus alive. The emperor ordered everyone to leave the room except the high priest and Ludus. The emperor clarified with the high priest, if it was all true. Ludus didn't understand what they were talking about. The high priest assured the emperor that she was the ancient god. He also admitted that the ancient god does not have to follow orders, as he considers them a mere request. The emperor did not want to accept the high priest's words, as Ludus was still alive. The high priest added that the ancient god would not obey the emperor's orders. Besides, the ancient god still showed benevolence towards Princess Ludus. The emperor ordered everyone to be silent. Angry, he asked to summon a deity that would be easier to manipulate this time. But Princess Ludus is unwilling to be victimized again. She resists her father's will. The princess has broken free from the bonds of fear. Nothing holds her back anymore. Unable to hold back, her father struck her. He is furious at how ungrateful his daughter is, to be shaking so much for her pathetic, worthless life. But Princess Ludus doesn't realize what she has to be grateful for eternal abuse. The terrified high priest is worried for the princess's life. He begs the emperor to stop beating her. Ludus never wanted to be a princess. She doesn't know why she hasn't rebelled against her father until now. No doubt, something changed after the ceremony. There was indifference in the princess's eyes. The emperor saw in her eyes the look of the high priest Duke Ivan, who lusted for power, and the foolish mother Ludus. There was no one who would not follow the path the emperor had set for him. What a lowlife the father thought his daughter was. People with. He grabbed her by the hair. He started saying she wasn't worthy to be his daughter. But this conversation was interrupted by a young man who came through the door, and he asked me to bring the girl in and then wake him up. At the door stood a beautiful man with cat-like eyes. The emperor greeted him in awe. Ludus was surprised, for she had never seen her father polite to anyone. The stranger stood in front of the girl, who looked at him fearfully. Ludus felt warm inside. He leaned toward her, but Ludus didn't recognize him. She asked who he was and what he was doing here. Looking into his eyes, she remembered that feeling during the ceremony. They were the eyes of that monster. The man confirmed that he was the one imprisoned in the crypt. Ludus was surprised by this. She didn't think the ancient god would be such a handsome guy. The princess thought it must be a scary monster. He promised not to touch the girl. The man asked if the princess wanted him to deal with everyone who hurt her. Ludus still didn't believe him, but he touched her, then reassured the girl. Her body was on fire again. Concerned high priest stands behind the emperor. The man is determined to prove that he is a deity. Touching the girl, he made her feel warmth with his whole body. She glowed across the room. It was nothing but ancient magic. The deity confessed that if something happened to Ludus, or if the summoning circle disappeared, he would return to the world of chaos. The man admitted that she was the one who saved him. After all, the world of chaos is where all deities want to escape from, even if they have to do someone else's bidding. Ludus wasn't sure if she could trust him completely yet, but at least she didn't think he would hurt her. The man helped Ludus stand up. The pain in her leg, as well as throughout her body, went away. She was greatly surprised. The emperor had appealed to Mr. Lavaine, to an ancient deity. The emperor demanded that his request be honored in exchange for Lavaine being returned to this world. Outraged that the ancient deity did not realize that he had only received this body through ritual, he still politely requested that their request be fulfilled as well. Bowing his head before the deity, the emperor continued to plead with Mr. Lavaine, to which the man responded positively, but with the condition of handing over all powers to him. The frightened emperor was confused. Mr. Lavaine clarified that the emperor had not misheard. If he handed over all powers to him, it would be his duty as the new emperor to listen to his subjects' request. The man said that people don't understand how the ritual works. An ancient god does not become property to be summoned. If it wasn't for the will of the deity, the dirty girl would be dead by now. Even now, the emperor was pretending to care about Ludus in order to receive the grace of the ancient deity. Ludus knew she was being used, knew she was trash to them, but still somehow it hurt her. The emperor threw accusations at the deity. That's not how the ritual works. The ancient manuscripts say that in exchange for a sacrifice, the ancient deity must obey the will of the summoner. The power of thought alone was enough for the deity to bring the emperor before him on his knees. No one has the right to give him orders, not even the emperor himself. The high priest bowed before the deity. He is not bold enough to obey the Lord's orders. However, according to the magical treaty, they are entitled to the deity's help. There are 1,000 people dying in the kingdom. The high priest admitted that he himself was not comfortable with sacrificing the princess, but he only performed the ceremony in the hope that it would save the empire. The empire is in desperate need of Mr. Levain's help. And though the priest's knowledge in this area is lacking, but in the ancient manuscripts it was said that the call of the deity should benefit both sides. So he begged for help nonetheless. It was only now that Ludus was beginning to think about it. She should have died during the ceremony, but for some reason she was alive. After all, she was the one who called the deity into our world. Therefore, his power belongs to Ludus. The Lord only does her bidding, and if the princess doesn't want it, he won't lift a finger. The emperor didn't believe it. He thought it was nonsense. To this, Mr. Levain decidedly said to kneel before his daughter, whom he had mocked all his life. Mr. Levain ordered the high priest to heal the princess. The man urged the princess to calm down. Mr. Levain left, and the high priest went about the business of healing the princess. The high priest confessed, when he thinks Mr. Levain is gone, he suddenly appears in front of him. His presence is almost impossible to notice, and soon Princess Ludus would know about it. Having completed his treatment, the high priest escorted the princess to her room. But the princess didn't want to go back to Celine's room. After all, they would put on their masks of goodness again, and in their hearts they would curse her. Princess Ludus couldn't take it, to which the priest suggested a visit to the Temple of the Gods. The priest felt guilty about the sacrificial ceremony. He participated in it anyway, and his guilt towards the princess is undeniable. At least this way he can redeem himself to her, although even the emperor can't bring knights to the temple. The monks introduced the princess to her new room. It was a sitting room that wasn't used often, so they apologized for the small mess. The monks offered Princess Ludus some more suitable room, but she refused. She said she was fine with it. The monks told the princess not to be shy and to call if she needed anything. Ludus kept lying there in thought. In her mind, she was going over Mr. Levain's words. Ludus doesn't want to use the power of an ancient deity, but she can't abandon her people either. She doesn't want to stop being the emperor's puppet again. Now she will have to take care of herself. The emperor entered her room. The princess decided that she would no longer tremble at the sight of this man. And then her father remembered his youngest daughter. He was sorry that he had done that to Selena, that he had been too strict with her. Had he done that damn ritual for that? 3 years ago, there was one attack from the eastern lands. A terrible thing happened. The undisputed strength of the empire was shattered and began to buckle under the enemy. The emperor thought the power would grow after the sacrifice. Father changed his sneaky tactics to trick Princess Ludus. He made an offer. If she agreed to control the power of the deity, he would treat her as his own daughter. But Ludus realizes that there was, is, and will be a difference. Her father will not love her as he would his adored pure-blood offspring. He is willing to play the role of a good father, just to get what he wants. Princess Ludus wonders if this man even has the right to call himself her father. She can't remember the last time she was so determined. After the ritual, nothing can break her anymore. Nothing will stop the princess, Ludus, anymore. Her father's poisonous words will no longer deceive her. Father kept wondering what she wanted to do to control the power of the deity. Ludus asks to fulfill the conditions. There are 2 cards Princess Ludus can play against the emperor. The first is that Celine would be the best sacrifice. If the emperor intends to reenact the ritual, then it makes some sense. Despite the lack of pure blood in Princess Ludus's veins, her younger sister treated her like cattle. Let's see how the clergy and the public react to this. Gossip is what the ruling family fears most. Whether father is thinking about it, the princess doesn't know. Maybe they'll stage a coup to overthrow the current emperor. For example, Duke Ivana could replace him. Yes, what does this filthy half-breed think of herself? Thought the emperor. What does she want from him? What should some trembling youngster hand over powers to this deity? Ludus thought in a past life he would have hit her long ago. It made one wonder if he was afraid of Mr. Levain. But she wants nothing, absolutely nothing, from her father. No love, no money, no possessions. Now he can't manipulate Princess Ludus, so he must respect her and treat her as an equal. And if the emperor doesn't agree, he can leave here. The emperor agrees to listen to the princess, and so the princess laid out her first condition. The power of the ancient deity will only be used in the interests of the empire. That is stabilization and getting rid of the monsters. The emperor jumped up. He shouted that the princess didn't realize how much potential the ancient deity had. After all, ridding the empire of monsters is not the only problem. But the princess believes that the attack of monsters at the moment is the most disturbing to the kingdom at the moment. Other problems can be dealt with. Later, we will get rid of the current ones. The princess's second condition is that she wants to live outside the palace. She wants to move to the Duchy of Arctis, and it has to be notarized. And the third condition is to stop the aggressive relationship she has to leave. At least it will give her some time to prepare, before finally severing all ties with the emperor. The emperor thinks that only an ungrateful wretch would use the refuge of another family to hide behind the clergy. He says that the princess does not realize what she is doing. By such statements, she is undermining part of the imperial family. He is confused why she chose the Duchy of Arctis. But since ancient times, this duchy has been loyal to the empire. They are better than anyone else able to honor the great power. It is the only and acceptable option for all. This duchy believes it is their duty to produce talented knights from under their wings every year. The current duke is currently fighting on the front lines. Princess Ludus will be safe, and while that is all, the emperor asked if she knew what would happen to her little sister. For Celine loves the young duke. But while all the conditions were over, the night came, and the emperor accepted the princess's conditions, though reluctantly. He's probably pretending that nothing happened. Princess Ludus remembers everything, thinks he's done nothing wrong, and that hurts. But what matters most now is the future of the people, and only from the princess depends on the success of the fight against the monsters, because only she has the power of the ancient deity. It is necessary to have time to do everything she has planned before the emperor changes his mind. Now all the cards are in Princess Ludus's hands, and only on her depends the future of the once great and powerful empire. The princess just got tired and started to fall, and then Mr. Levine appeared from behind. Taking her firmly by the shoulders, the Lord held her up. He took her in his arms and put her to bed, he for the job done, and left. Again the nightmare that plagued Mistress Ludus, the memories of the sacrificial rite, why his hands were bloody. Mr. Levine asked with a smile on his face what Ludus wanted, but she was confused. Ludus did not understand what was happening to her, what had happened during the ritual, nor was it clear why her robes were torn and stained with blood. The princess got up when the sun was already very high. She wondered how long she had slept. All the accumulated fatigue must have made itself felt. The high priest had repeatedly said that the princess needed a good rest. Therefore, he purposely didn't wake her up. Sipping a cup of coffee, the princess thanked the monk for his concern. Now she needed to gather her thoughts and take a walk. She went out into the courtyard while she is in the temple of the god whatever she needed. Besides, the high priest had told her to help with any of the princess's business. The monk said she could use the place as she pleased. Now the temple is guarded by the Almighty himself, and not even the emperor can enter without their permission. The last time she felt like this, she had many issues in front of her that needed to be addressed. And it didn't seem like anything bad, she heard Mr. Levain's voice. He was calling for her. Gritting her teeth, she slowly walked to the call of the voice. Levain stood by the tree by himself and inquired how well rested the princess was. He knows her father was visiting. Nothing can be hidden from him. Mr. Levain seems to be caring, but if you look at it that way, he never interfered in her problems directly. He stated that if you think Ludus is suspicious of him and why he doesn't help her directly, he hesitates to go forward because she never gives a clear statement of what she wants. And after all, this is a prerequisite for activating the power of an ancient deity. Without clear instructions, Mr. Levain cannot fulfill Princess Ludus's wish. He executes her will and can intervene only when she wishes it, even in matters that directly affect the princess. Gave an example by asking what the princess's favorite season is. She answered that she likes spring best,